Phosphor Dot fans, earl@thelogbook.com, back on the Colecovision, back with another much more recent homebrew. This is a Team Pixel Boy. I believe this is an MSX conversion, because the MSX computer standard, which took off more in Japan and South America than it did in the States, is the hardware of the ColecoVision is within shouting distance of the MSX standard. So it's fairly easy to convert MSX computer games that don't require a lot of keyboard interaction, of course, or like Sega SG-1000 games to the ColecoVision. And Team Pixel Boy is one of these groups that specializes in doing that. And here we have as such, we have a port of the arcade game King and Balloon, which is one of the more obscure entries in the Namco arcade playbook. But it's an old favorite of mine just because of how ridiculous it is and how fun. So let's give it a shot. Okay. You're trying to keep the balloons from reaching the king. And if they get the king, you have a very short window of time to retrieve him. He doesn't seem too alarmed about, he seems to be ready to marry Poppins into either, his old digs or wherever he lands. So I still don't think he seems too terribly concerned with regime change happening. Now there was kind of primitive speech synthesis. In the arcade game. But we were approximating that with different sound effects here. Now, if you notice over on the right, I didn't hit any of them there. Good job. You notice over on the right, you're not counting out the number of these cannons that you have available. That's not your lives. It's how many kings get carried away. That's how your success in the game is measured. I guess we've just added to the line of succession with our performance in the bonus round there. Yeah, you can lose any number of cannons, and what you're really counting is, oh no, bye-bye. What you're really counting is, the number of kings that get carried off. So, the lives of the peasants manning the cannon, that really doesn't matter. That is of no concern. The king, however, that is of concern, apparently. Sometimes it's just as well to wait for them to land fruitlessly. And it's kind of funny, they're not going to do anything if the king doesn't just walk over to them. That's why I don't think he's too... I don't think this is social commentary that Namco was intentionally building into the game. It's just something that I've noticed over time over playing the arcade game, which was a thing that I discovered... Oh, no! Okay, well, no more kings. The arcade game is something I first discovered via Namco Museum Encore on the PlayStation 1, because while this did have an American release, it was not a very wide release, I'll put it that way. Namco did not have a huge presence because this game was more or less contemporaneous with Pac-Man, Rally X, and it just didn't set the world on fire. Let's give it another shot. It's a very good translation. This is a game that does not get enough love, so there are not a whole lot of home versions to compare it to. Yeah, the balloons can land and take off again harmlessly, provided the king doesn't just walk in there and get on board. Bonus round, here we go again. Very much like Galaga, the bonus round. I got more balloons this time. I got 3,600 points. Hey, the line of succession just grew by 1. Oh. Bye-bye. Oh. As cute and weird as the game is, it is also very challenging because these enemies do not really move in a predictable fashion, so it's not just... I know there's a tendency to think of it as kind of a reuse of code from Galaxian. But it's not really that. And your Galaxian skills don't necessarily translate to this game. So, excellent translation of King and Balloon, a game that does not have nearly enough home versions of it, and is fiendishly fun in any form.